So first of all, I think there are a lot of founders that are here, and it's a very important conversation today because you're finally meeting somebody in India that has built a deep tech company, right? We've all heard deep tech, deep tech, deep tech, but somebody's finally launched something in deep tech, and I'm so happy. Srinath and Moin, first of all, a good round of applause for these guys. They have literally put India on the map in space tech. And so we're going to show a short video about the launch, but Srinath and Moin, I met them 2018, I think, right? It was around the first few months of our fund, we met them, and my team actually went to Chennai, and they came back and they with these wide, big eyes that somebody's building a rocket in India. I was like, and we were like, yeah, what are you talking? India mein rocket kaun banata hai? And they said, no, we went to this one room at IIT Madras, and there was this incredible number of people, and they would not let us go outside the room until everybody explained what they were doing, right? So they came back, were like, kuch samajh mein nahi aaya, but something incredible was going on. So you guys remember that time. So, but what's really interesting, and we can talk about building companies in India, there's a lot of conversation there. But I really want to, first, both of you guys to tell us a bit about your background, because most people don't know this, but Srinath actually was a treasury manager for AIG in New York. And how that transformed into being the face of space tech in India, right? And the fact that both of them met up playing cricket, right? It's a very, very interesting conversation, and so I'm going to hand it over to you. Srinath and Moin, please introduce yourselves and how you guys got to where you are.
Sure. So, hello everyone. Thank you, Anirudh, for having us here. Thank you, everyone, for having us here. So, I think Anirudh already told the highlights of the story. So, I'm going to try to make the journey interesting here. So, I grew up in Chennai as a space enthusiast, one of the people who probably was looking up at the skies a lot more when they were young. But when it was time to do engineering, everyone in my family was against me doing anything in space, aerospace, because it was simply not something where you'll get a job. And even till date, I think I get, people joke about that saying, you didn't get a job, you became an entrepreneur. So maybe there is some validity to that. But that's how it started. And then after I finished my electrical engineering degree, I worked at ABB, then, did a master's in financial engineering because everyone around me was doing something in finance and I thought I'm missing out on the next big thing. And then I went to US to do a program in financial engineering in Columbia. But that was 2008. So the only guys who were hiring were people who were hedging. 2008 was not a good time to be entering New York for the first time. But got in there, understood some risk management, understood some how people look at managing money and hedging risk. And but I very quickly realized in those years that my heart is still in aerospace. So that is where my real soul searching started. Realized I'll have to do this, quit that job, went to do a master's in aerospace engineering from University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. That was in the middle of nowhere though. All the action in US was around SpaceX. SpaceX is in Los Angeles. I was in Illinois, nothing really happened there. So moved there, that's where the AIG story came in from AXA, went to AIG. But I saw some small satellites struggling to go to orbit. So this was 2015-16. There was some noise from SpaceX. They had landed their boosters. So if you've seen a SpaceX launch, they retrieve a part of the rocket that usually is just dropped off, right? It's discarded for everyone else. But SpaceX has figured out a way to catch it and use it again. So they had just done that for the first time successfully in December 2015. So there was a lot of noise around that. But there was also equal amount of noise about people being unhappy with SpaceX because they don't do these launches for small satellites. So that's where this journey started for me. And probably Moin, you can introduce yourself. But I used to know Moin because we got connected through mutual friends. His friends and my friends were playing cricket in a ground in Chennai. That's how we got to know each other. And then, Moin, you can continue your story as well.
Yeah, thank you, Anirudh, for having us here. Thank you, everybody. Circuitous path again. I wanted to be a sound engineer, okay, but I ended up in aeronautical engineering. Not sure I really did study about it, but I had some understanding about it though. Then I went on and pursued MBA in aviation management from University of Newcastle, Australia. Worked for Qantas. Came back to India, started a cosmetics business. We were manufacturing air fresheners and a couple of other things too, right? So that is something that we started doing. But a couple of years into that, figured out that this is not what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. I think, like as Srinath said, we started playing cricket together and all of those things. So I think we had a couple of other friends too, right? So both him and I don't drink, right? So we were the shoppers for the other people who were there. And we thought they will be having the insane conversations. Instead, I think we had the insane conversations about building rockets. And that's how it all started, I would say. And I think one of the meetings were we just happened to cold call a lot of professors. I think around some 70 to 80 professors. Out of them, one of them was kind enough to give us a meeting in person too, right? In Chennai. His name is Professor Satya Chakravarti. At that point of time, he was in US and I was in Chennai. Went for that meeting with my cousins. I just told them there's going to be another 2 minutes meeting. Anyways, professor is going to advise us to tell us go back and do whatever you're doing. Okay, it's like it.
I just want to clarify. So the idea was that I think Srinath and Moin started cold emailing professors in India, stating that we want to build a rocket company in India. It has never been done before, but we will do it, and we have a crazy idea how to 3D print a rocket engine. And I think out of all the professors, only one replied, who was interestingly from Chennai himself, and was at NCCRD, and this is the conversation he's talking about.
So in that conversation was I just thought it's going to be another 2 minutes because generally professors advise you and then they send you back. But this conversation was different. I thought it's going to be a 2-minute one. I think he also dialed in from US and I just thought 5 minute hoga is kuch advice karenge phir bhej denge, okay. But that one conversation changed our lives, I would say. I think the conversation went on for 2 hours. And suddenly we started building rockets on Excel. We were already building rockets on Excel sheets. But I think at that point of time, the Excel sheet also started making some sense. But yeah, that's about the starting point.
But interestingly, considering, this is 2018, I'm guessing, right? 17, India was still thinking about e-commerce, right? We were talking about Flipkart, and I think Flipkart was 16 billion acquisition around the time. And no one was talking about hardware, no one was talking about tech, deep tech. And you decided, I'm going to build this here. And it's fashionable then to go abroad, right? Because easier. And you knew that you were also going to be in a highly regulated sector. And despite all of that, you decided to build it in India. What was driving you to build it here?
So I would say 3 things. One was whenever I used to speak to people in the US to understand the market there, people used to listen to me just because I was from India. I was not from the rocket sector or any space sector, but people just gave that respect to India. So I realized one thing very quickly in the US, that ISRO had that credibility abroad. So this is not a bad place to start doing work. That's number 1. Number 2 was more of a necessity. I was not a US citizen, so it was impossible to go build rockets in US. Just paperwork would have been more complex than the rocket itself. Okay. And the third part is, eventually wanted to come back, so that was also there. But see, the real challenge for me and Moin was, so we all knew the Elon story. 200 million PayPal exit, 100 went to Tesla, 100 went to SpaceX. But where did the 100 go is the question, right? The 100 went into facilities to build the rocket. So we knew that if we crack that facility angle, that 100 can be brought down to 10 also. So that's where this professor search came from. We knew that academic partners are available in the country, but it was not. Now we have a clear map of who to go to for what after some 5-6 years of slogging. But at that time, it was more okay, if you have a university, that number can be brought down from 100 million to 10 million. And 10 million you can find somewhere in India. 100 I still don't, at that time I definitely didn't think it was possible. 10 I thought, it was because, as you were saying, right, the Flipkart story was coming out. It was not like startups were very crazy. Already there was a start, some normalization was happening. So that was the hope. And I think once we started talking to Prof and through him, he guided us to Perumal sir, who is the father of India's GSLV. Amazing. Those people are willing to just pour out, share the knowledge that they have and so on. So it just felt definitely this is the place to be after that.
But then Moin, you must have faced a situation because of what Srinath said. Yes, you decided to build in India. But NASA was still recruiting and they were paying much, or SpaceX was recruiting Indian engineers. And so where do you get the talent, right? And that would have been a problem, that too in Chennai. Not to say anything else, but if you want to be in tech, you're in Bangalore, right? You go to Bombay, maybe you go to Delhi. But in Chennai, it was not even on the map of the Indian startup ecosystem in 2017. So how are you convincing your team and your core team that you recruited, what were you doing to tell them, hey, we're going to build this rocket company, we're going to build it in Chennai, right? And guess what? We're going to do it, right? How was that conversation coming along?
It started because space has a flair or a charisma already, right? So there are a lot of people who want to actually build cool things. So because the positioning was within IIT Madras, there was a lot of attraction towards about that this is possible because it is done through IIT Madras incubation and all of those things. And a lot of people actually, we found that all the space is the hardest part and everything. We found people, going to space is cool, they're watching SpaceX videos. They'll come and tell us hey, we're also wanting to do that. We are taking part in this competition, that competition. So, because IITs have that generally. So, I think the first couple of people, we just started interviewing a lot of people saying that we are going to build rockets. We don't know how we had that confidence. And I would also say this, our first pitch was to a rocket scientist. Okay, that's the Mr. R.V. Perumal, right? He's the father of GSLV program. Both of us are not rocket scientists, right? And we went and we were pitching to him how to build a rocket. So I still think that was a very different experience itself. But once we heard that it is possible to do all of these things, once he was also appreciating the fact that this is possible, there was some kind of confidence in it that we started convincing people that yes, this is the thing that we want to build. Luckily, because space already had that charm, and ISRO was always launching at least once in 3 months or something. So people knew about space itself, and it always had its effect on people, right? And the youngsters wanted to do something out of the box, because the fintech and the SaaS and all of those things, they knew that this is the future about in terms of money, but in terms of making real tech or hardware, we saw that spark in a few people. Once couple of people started joining on board with us, I think we opened the doors to all the colleges. We found a lot of people. I think the passion part just helped us go through along with it.
And so I think this would be a perfect time now, because I think everybody's heard what Agnikul is, what they do. But what is really Agnikul and why is it really important to the world? I think this is maybe a great time to explain what the rocket is all about and how is it revolutionizing the access to space.
Moin can also answer it more in a detailed way, because he talks to customers who crib to him about some problems, but I'll tell you my perspective. And to be honest, it's a big lesson for me in terms of every time you talk to a customer, they either validate your hypothesis or give you some more reasons to differentiate yourself a little better, right? That is happening even today, literally in the last 1 month also.
After all of this.
Yeah. After the launch, learning a little more about, this is actually what customers want, which is great. So I get asked this question, and I do a lot of the first set of conversations for fundraisers, right? So there's a common question that people ask, probably the top 5 questions, this will be one, which is, there is a rocket flying every 3 days. Once in every 3 days already. Falcon 9 out of SpaceX is flying once in 3 days. Why does anyone have to build any more rockets? That's a standard question for an outsider, which is, I think, a super sensible question to ask. And the reason for that is because they have come out, or they have become, SpaceX has become the most rigid way to go to orbit, in the sense there are so many constraints in flying with them that it is almost impossible to fly with them unless you're a huge customer or you're putting tons and tons of satellite mass in orbit. So, but what all these satellites have done over the last, I would say almost 15-20 years now, is they have shrunk in size. They have followed this Moore's law, right? Everything has become smaller and smaller. Lesser size, lesser mass, more power, lesser cost. This is what the satellite guys have been following. So we suddenly, I think around the time when Moin and I were looking at this market, there was a gap. The rockets were too big, satellites are too small. And there was no way to match that gap. And until today, it is actually existing. And we live in a world today which is a little geopolitically driven, and that is leading to launch vehicle severe shortage. PSLV is flying at some frequency, so that is one thing, but that's done for Indian missions. Then you have, people used to fly Soyuz, but now with the Russia-Ukraine thing, that is, the Western world has stayed away from Soyuz. Ariane used to fly out of Europe. That has now been, Ariane 5, which was their most flying rocket, which has been shelved. 6 has not yet been proven, so that's another gap. So if you just look at the world today, you have 3 rockets. You have Falcon 9, which is doing 90% of mass to orbit. There is PSLV, which does some 9%, and 1% is from this company, Rocket Lab. That's it. So it's a very strange situation where you have so much happening in space, but very few people are actually able to take stuff to orbit. So this is one more gap. And then the rigidity about this is the rocket, fly it, or sorry, that is what SpaceX is telling people. So that is where when we talk to customers, we realize that there is a lot of angst about their needs not being addressed. In fact, and I don't know, maybe all of you would have met this, we always say customers dictate the market. The only market that is not like that today is, I think, launch vehicles. Only the rocket guys determine what has to happen. Satellite guys are still at the mercy of the rocket guys. And so it was a very obvious case for us to change it. Maybe Moin, you can talk about what you've been hearing. So Moin talks to customers quite a bit. So yeah, go on, Moin.
So I think I'll give you the background too, right? This was a space race that started in 1960s, right? I think who wants to go to the moon first and all of those things. So everybody built rockets accordingly to that. Nobody thought about the future of satellites or something like that. So this is how it actually started. Over the period of time, because the market was driven by the launch vehicles, basically the customer, who suppose in other businesses, a customer is God. In launch vehicle businesses, customer is optional. That is how it started to be. That is how the launch vehicles today behave. For example, even if you take SpaceX, right, they launch their own satellites, right? That's the Starlink. The other customers are just given okay, I'm giving you, maybe I'll give you a lift. And they charge you for that lift. That's how it actually works. If you consider the SpaceX thing. It's whatever traditional businesses are, whatever other businesses are, this is not how markets are. This is not how things are. So you can understand how customers would be feeling. Everybody wants to be the owner. Here you are never the owner. You are always de do, kuch to de do, jaga de do. That is how it is, right? You don't get it. So suddenly you get it around 2 years later or 3 years later. These are the kind of slots that you get it. We wanted to change that perspective about the space business itself. The customer should dictate where they want to go, when they want to go, and how they want to go. I think this perspective, once we start telling to them, is this is what we've been waiting for nearly 20 years. That's the established companies, this is the response that you get. The newer ones get so excited because they get to own a mission. Generally, there are mission owners. When something happens, you might have heard a name Mission 59 or Mission 58. So there's a particular thing that get attached. So if you are doing a ride share, that's what you call it as when a lot of people joint or pool together to go someplace, that's what you call it as a ride share. You don't get to own a mission. And any customer is not happy. It's I just hitched a hike with somebody else. That's not actually cool enough to say outside too. So owning the mission is something that every small customer would also want. That's something that we've also identified with a lot of people that we talk to. Because this gives them the advantage to say I can launch whenever I want. And this also reduces the cost, right? Because if you're not putting into space, you actually have to safeguard that satellite on ground. So although you are ready, you're not being carried. Although you built a satellite, somebody may impose you because you're traveling with other people. And you might affect their hardware. So there are a lot of constraints that also come upon you. So if you build a $50,000 satellite, and they'll add constraints on you, you will end up building up a $100,000 satellite. Because the constraints are coming from other people. It may not even be required for them to build it. But suddenly, just because you're actually taking that ride along with them, you start meeting all those requirements. So so it's the general purposes of people that go to space are for Earth observation and communication, and you have a couple of other industries also coming. But what is the actual cost of a satellite that a company wants to build increases because the launch vehicle companies are telling them. Also, the other payload guys, other customers that would be traveling along with you, they will also dictate it. So you end up making satellites not at the cost that you want. So that is the pain point that the customers feel. And not having a ride when they want is the other pain that they
But how are you addressing this? Because again, most of the people may not know what the exact vehicle is. How are you addressing the fact
Correct. Now I've told you the problem. I think Srinath, you can start with the solution.
Yeah, so I think how do we bring flexibility, right? I think that is the constraints is what Moin was talking about. Flexibility, we think about it broadly in 3 ways. One, first of all, people should be able to fly whenever they want to fly. So timeline-wise flexibility. You are able to do that only if you remove the ride share aspect. You remove the rideshare aspect by shrinking your rocket. So what do you mean by shrinking rockets? Think of the laptop world. For example, all of us here are buying laptops. Some of us would want like 32 GB of RAM. Some of us would want 64 GB RAM. We don't go to the market wanting only saying there is only a 64 GB. Even if you're only going to be doing just basic browsing and emails, you have to buy that laptop. That's not how that world works. But that's how the rocket world works. So we decided we'll be able to keep that level of modularity to the rocket. So we can fly our vehicles with different number of engines. A smaller customer smaller in the sense from a mass standpoint, would need a lighter or a less powerful rocket. A large customer would need a more powerful rocket. And that change happens by just adding engines or removing engines. So we spend a lot of time in making the entire vehicle modular. That's how you give timeline flexibility. And also you give cost flexibility, because just like a 16 GB laptop is cheaper than a 64 GB laptop, a rocket with say 4 engines is cheaper than a rocket with say 7 engines. So a lighter satellite will also cost them lesser to go to space. So we are giving flexibility in cost and time. Now there's one more thing. So if any of us here take a ride share or like a bus, for example, right, which is what actually a SpaceX rocket is more like a train to space, not even a bus. It's so huge compared to what the actual satellites are, right? So like a train will drop you off in a station, a Falcon 9 would drop you off somewhere in the near where you want to go. Last mile connectivity is an issue. So from where they drop you off in space, you will have to go to somewhere else in space. And people actually have found that as an opportunity, and people are building in-space mobility solutions, which at least Moin and I believe are like, you're complicating it even more already, because now that system has to work. You're paying for taking that system also along with you. You've introduced one more middle person in the story, and you have to pay for that profit margin also in between. So how many, just to put a camera in space, you already have to build a satellite. Then that satellite will have to go on this platform. And that platform and the satellite and the camera together will have to go on a rocket. Now if you, in between there are also these people who are like a marketplace, right? Who are like brokers. Take the launch vehicle shortage and take the satellite supply and then try to match it. You're paying them also commission. So by the time that photo comes from the satellite, you've already paid everyone 30% in the story. So it's so expensive, and that is, I think, what we're trying to completely cut out. For us, it should be like literally take the camera, put it in our rocket, and we're done.
And you're able to do that because you've also brought down the production time, right? From 8 months. So it usually takes a rocket engine 8 months? 6 months to get built. And with Agnikul it takes?
2 days, 3 days.
3 days. 3 days to build a rocket engine, which is completely 3D printed. And a lot of firsts, right? I think it was the first, this launch that took place was the first ever fully 3D printed rocket engine to ever be, put on a rocket. And
it happened to be the world's first with such an engine, and also India's first from the propulsion technology standpoint. India's, actually, maybe there's a video, we can play that, and then I think maybe this is a good time
I think
to the video.
The next part will talk. So I asked them that, do you have a launch video? Because many people would love to see the dedication it took to get this video off this rocket off the ground. And I want now Srinath to walk us through it, what exactly is going on. And yeah.
So that's the mission patch. Can you just go rewind a second? No, not possible. Can you stop there for a second? So there's a meaning for the patch also. I don't know if you wanted me to explain that. So you can see the rocket in the middle, and that we call our rocket Agniban, right? Agniban is basically an arrow of fire. It's the Sanskrit for rocket. And so someone on the team came up with the idea of calling the launch pad Dhanush. So that's the other one there as well. So you can see that look like a bow and arrow. Go on. And it has a lot of the other things about all the new things. It's not clear here. See some of the images. So this is a flag off point where the rocket is actually brought to the pad.
All stations.
So this is our mission control room.
-6 hours.
The room with
all stations should out of comments for ungiven
If you can just pause it for one second. Yeah. So I just want to explain that this at this point, this is the fourth try, right?
This is the fifth
try.
The one that flew, yeah.
So they had 4 tries which had to be aborted, all system aborts. And this last try, the team has not slept now for some 72 hours.
Yeah.
And they have been inside Sriharikota, jahan par you're not allowed to take any mobile phones are not allowed. There is no, you can't even wear a wearable watch.
Yeah, we call it the 90s experience.
Yeah. So, and they take your laptop away. And the team has been sitting inside for 3 days under intense pressure because the last abort was at 11 seconds.
Yeah.
And Doordarshan, every single channel you can imagine was covering it. And then in front of the nation this happened. And then now you'll understand the emotion that's going to come out. Now over to you, Srinath, sorry.
Yeah, so because you're paused it on here, so you won't see me and Moin here because we were in the other. There was, I think a few seconds before, there was a room with the blue color floor. If you can rewind a little, this one. This is actually ISRO Mission Control Center. To be very clear, we don't use this. This is where the VIPs sit. Moin and I are here because the VIPs are here. Otherwise, even we were longing to be in the other place that you just saw when you forwarded, right? Because that is where the actual control of the launch happens. So there is a very rigid hierarchy that is there for every launch, because it's like, it's almost like, 21 teams have to come together for one launch. 21. Of that, Agnikul is one. There are 20 other teams within Sriharikota who have to help us. And that is controlled by, there's one person there in the middle, in this big row here, the one person who is actually holding the mic. That is a person, he is a test director. That is the topmost hierarchy in the mission. And then he is basically coordinating with the 20 teams and one person from our side, which is again not me and mine. You'll see that girl, her name is Uma, so she will be the one person from our side. And so, when we are at this point, like Anirudh was saying, fourth abort or something, we are also super nervous about what is happening in the mission control room. And it is very difficult to not be making decisions and allow the team to make decisions. Because Moin and I are used to making decisions, right? But we are sitting here and if you think about it, we don't have enough data to make all the decisions at that moment. So there's a lot of trust at that point. You're basically leaving it to the team to run the show at that point. That we got a taste of that. Moin and I got a taste of that in all the engine tests we do. We do engine tests very similar to this. So in fact, Moin and I don't come anywhere near the mission control room for the engine tests. We are somewhere else. We're doing other work. That is the best time we get to talk because no one will be disturbing us with any meetings at that time. So, and it always happens like 1 a.m., 2 a.m. in the night. In fact, Moin has a joke. He says, our engines are day blind. They only work in the night. Because invariably there is some delay and the engines fire only in the night. But anyway, the point is that is where we are at this moment. You will see that ding ding like this railway station announcement. That is how ISRO starts its countdowns. They actually don't telecast these things usually, but we got permission to do that. And this is, some parts of this will be publicly available, but this itself won't be exactly, but we have permission to broadcast it. Yeah, you can play it.
All stations, stand by for the time hour. T-minus 6 hours and counting. All stations should not countdown commence for Agnikul sorted mission with a scheduled lift off time at 5:45 hours IST on 15 seconds.
So we just cut from 6 hours to 15 seconds, but there is a lot that happens in between. So this is our pad. Can you pause for a second? Yeah, so there are 4 images of the vehicle just before liftoff. As you can see, T-minus 2 seconds. This is our pad that we built within Sriharikota. This is not ISRO's pad. And ISRO and InSpace have been very supportive to allow us to build this infrastructure within. And we did something a little more, unconventional there. So we built this pad in Chennai. And it was shipped in like 8 or 9 cargo containers. And then we brought it here. And so in a way, the success of this test not only proved the vehicle, the one that's flying, but also the pad, the mobility of the pad. Because we always, one of our pitches, the points that we pitch about is our pads are, mobile, are completely mobile, and that also is here. So this one, there are pictures of, I think, the exact launch pad that you will see in Chennai as well. So that is what here. What is happening at this moment is the engine is already on. So Anirudh was talking about the attempt before this, where the T-minus 11 seconds abort happened. there was a small problem that the ground system encountered at this phase, where you're seeing that the engine is ready to go, but you're clamped it down. The rocket is being pulled down and kept here. That's that moment. You can see the flame coming out. You can see, and there is inside the rocket, a million things are happening. The rocket is constantly checking its own health. So what we call that phase as an automated launch sequence. Like basically when the engine comes to life, there is so much vibration in the rocket that you will have to check everything again to make sure nothing has come off loose. And we do so much testing anyway before, but you don't trust any of that and you again check. So that is what is happening right now. The engine is on, the vehicle is being held. At any point you can basically let go and you're counting down to that. Just wanted to give that context.
You should just go back 5 seconds and then play. Yeah, perfect.
10, 9, 8, 7, 0. Plus 5 seconds. Lift off confirm. Plus 10 seconds. P3 tracking.
So you can hear all the background
Plus
ISRO
15
commentary.
seconds. P4 tracking.
These are all different radars tracking the vehicle.
tracking.
Plus 20 seconds. P2 tracking. Even tracking. Plus 25 seconds.
So at this point, still Moin and I are in complete
Plus
disbelief
30 seconds.
about, oh, this really happened, okay. Because we saw so many small obstacles that when it took off, it was like absolutely no problem, right? It was a completely successful flight. There'll be an announcement here. Let's hear that out.
Over maneuver happened. Wind biasing is completed.
So can you stop that for a second, 1 second? So they said that, right? Pitch over maneuver happened, wind biasing is completed. So there is a phase in every rocket's journey wherein the vehicle is most prone to get destroyed. This happens when the atmosphere is still too thick and you're going still too fast for it. Because when you go to space, really there's no atmosphere. So you can do whatever you want. You can move your rocket any way you want, you'll be fine. When you're very low, you're very slow. So then also you can do whatever you want. But there is this phase where you're going almost supersonic, but there is thick atmosphere. So if you maneuver your vehicle too much, you can see that the rocket is trying to get over ocean. If you do that a little too strongly, the atmosphere will hit you like a rock. And the rocket will just simply break apart. So that is what this flight was designed for. It's crossing that phase. So when we say wind biasing completed, basically there is an entire set of work that happens in the countdown to make sure you fly into the wind. And your program is supposed to do that. So for us autopilots, is that, all of them talk about autopilot more in the EV industry, right? For us it is about, this is where it started, like autopilot as a control systems theory in the engineering world started for rockets, for orbital rockets. So we tested that out as well. So this is one of the best moments for us actually in the entire flight. Wind biasing completed, we're like, okay, the vehicle didn't break apart.
And just to point out, you see that woman in the little corner in the white?
Oh yeah, Uma.
Everybody has celebrated, but she has not celebrated yet.
She's the project director actually.
She is, because it's not, the flight is not over yet for her. Please play.
Plus 1 minute.
That this is world's first single piece 3D printed semi-cryogenic engine.
It's historical, you must all realize. It's not just a launch of a sounding rocket based on liquid engine.
May 30th, 2024. 2 months ago exactly.
I was going to end with this at the end. After this launch took place, and Srinath, I told you this when we were in Chennai, so we took all the teenagers of all our LPs to go see the rocket factory. And 25 of them showed up and they were gracious enough the entire day they spent with them. But one of the investors that is in our fund and also invested directly, he said something, I think the words I'll never forget. He said, I have made many investments that have made me money, but there is only one investment that has made me proud, and that is Agnikul. Now let's talk about some of the hairy stuff, right? Because beautiful rocket took off, right? It looks really gorgeous, but it was not a simple journey, right? I think let's go back to 2018, Special round 1. You had to now convince, Special also was actually very early in its own journey. So they were also trying to convince you can do deep tech in India. I think you pitched to them. We spoke. I don't know if there's a few more funds you must have spoken to, but Special was the only one that invested in round 1, right? And you have, so tell me what that whole journey was like. Obviously today everybody wants to invest in Agnikul, right? Jisse pucho, it's like ye share hai kya, right? But what was that journey like, and how are you balancing A, convincing investors, B, you had to convince consumers that who are going to buy this rocket, but C, you had also got to convince this entire infrastructure of India. This is pre-in-space, right? You're talking about directly with ISRO at this point. So you were managing resistance, wind biasing apparently at every level.
That's a nice way to put it. Yeah.
How are you doing it? How are you guys keeping yourself motivated?
Yeah, so Special was, I think, I should have counted it properly, but it was the 400th pitch or something. So at that point, I mean the seed round point, it was the 400th or something. So by that time, Moin used to always, tell me, like, because so there is usually in a pitch, I start and then Moin comes in, and then we alternately talk. So Moin is like, how do you tell the same story exactly 400 times? So I just think first for me, it was like I really enjoyed telling this story part of it, because it just gets me so high when I talk about the real problem in the market. That helps. Passion helps, one. I should also think that, I should also thank the universe for this change that happened in policy, right? In 2020, we were all like, so again, one more stroke of luck in our story. Moin and I are always like thankful for all the lucky moments as well. I know a lot of people have various views of luck, but we have been lucky, I'll tell you that also, because Feb 29 of 2020 is when the pre-series A money came in, the round where,
Actually, it was so dramatic. I was actually visiting them for the first time. I think the team had only met them. And they were about to ask a question, ki sir, paisa kab aayega? And they looked at the phone and the wiring had just come. Were you waiting to meet us before the money comes in?
We were joking about that like that. Yeah, so I remember that date also because it was that leap year, right? Feb 29, 2020. And then March 17th, there was a shutdown. Right? And imagine if the round had been 17 days late. You know how many deals got put on pause at that time. So that is a big stroke of luck, right? We didn't time it. It just happened that way. The other thing is, so everything was ready, and then it looked so dark at that time because people were talking about remote work for years together, and those first 1 or 2 months. And then in May of 2020, right, the finance minister then came out and made this announcement about Atmanirbhar initiatives. And I don't know if you remember, the speech was like, there is her talking on the, in the assembly, and then you have this, the TV was like in 2 halves. It was like a presentation was actually being made. And then they showed agriculture, they showed automotives, they showed so many things. And suddenly out of the blue there was space there. Who would have thought space will come there? And then they said, we are going to come up with a new entity to enable space tech in India to do private things. So literally that night itself, Moin and I sat and wrote a really long email to ISRO saying, how can we be a part of the story? So I think those moments are like the big moments that kept driving us. There was always some signs of people somehow encouraging you. We thought, worst case, we'll build good tech because we were doing everything original, right? Nothing what ISRO does is in ours. So we believe at the worst case of this would be selling this to ISRO. So you can't become a SpaceX, but at least we'll become a large supplier to ISRO, which is still okay from a business standpoint. So that is what kept us going. Moin, you can.
Yeah, I think a couple of things were there. Like India's been a spacefaring nation, right? So we were seeing like US, NASA was actually trying to privatize like to the other companies. We were sure because there are only 5 or 6 spacefaring nations. So if something is happening somewhere, then I think everybody would follow that. We always had that confidence, right? But it will take time. India comes like a little late, but when we come with a bang. That's something that we can always vouch for. So we had that confidence saying that someday this is going to happen. We don't know when. So when in 2017, this used to be a general question, right? Are you allowed to launch? So I think every pitch, I think the last question was about are you allowed to launch?
Top 5.
Yeah. And every time the answer is like this, there are no clear laws, which means we are allowed to launch. That's what it was all about. But in 2021, I think the in-space announcement happened because by the time we were seeing draft policies come out. So they were asking inputs from us, from the startups that were down there. They were around just 2 or 3 startups at that point of time. So they were asking inputs about what exactly do the startups need. So every year there was some ray of hope saying that something may come over a period of time. But I think COVID hit, and I think in that in-space worked. I think that's how I could at least say. But from that point, it's been regulatorily.
But you had to be prepared, right? The luck could have come, but what if you're not prepared for it?
Correct.
So it was.
The second thing is while it was COVID itself, as he said, it's going to be 2 years or 1 year, and the only question that was running that how do you build rockets sitting at home? It's sitting in office itself is slightly difficult to build, but how do you sit at home and build rockets? I think this question was on top of our heads at that point of time, and we didn't know till what time it's going to be down there. We luckily we had the money in the bank, so we slightly relieved. But what exactly is the progress that you do? So we don't know it's going to be 3 months or 6 months or 1 year. So we took up some interesting projects at that point of time. I mean to say within the companies how do you source all the rocket components from around the world? I think that was something that we started. So literally every country, the market centers, just on Google, wherever you can find the information, at that point of time we built a database for ourselves. If we need something for the rocket, these are the places that you can get it. But we also decided it has to be in India. And I think we constrained ourselves in that, but that actually worked in our favor because there was an ecosystem here itself. So I think there was this time where we spent our minds completely on how to build the rocket. So that was lucky for us.
And obviously now, when you look back, you connect all the dots and they all make sense. When you're looking at it forward, you don't know what's going to come next. And I think because there's a lot of good founders, some very good deep tech founders that pitched yesterday, Srinath and Moin, I think it's important for them to realize because many of them are just getting started. Some of them are pre-product, some were pre-revenue, some early revenues. That when you're building a deep tech product in India, and you've done it in the toughest of circumstances, right? I mean, when nobody even talked about it. What do you think they should be concentrating on for the next 18 to 24 months? That very critical space for you, that's 17 to, let's say, 20. 20 magic happened. Until 20, there was no magic. There was only questions. What should they also be doing? And you can take that they can take some inspiration from your journey. That until they get that magic, what should they be doing right now? Maybe 1 or 2 things they should really concentrate on.
I think one of the things that we both believe is the product should speak for itself. It's people know to sell things, but the product can also sell itself. I think we've been very true to that. And so I think we have a little bit of advices on the marketing side, but definitely Anirudh gives us on that. But we always believe that if you have a product that can speak for itself, then you're set for the rest of your life. That's something that we've always believed in. Building a deep tech, I think this is the fundamental approach that you need to have because it's easier to sway away from what you're actually building, right? And deep tech also gives you a lot of failures before the successes comes or attempts or something. So resilience is something, it's a trait I think it's very difficult to find these days within people, but I think among founders it's a common thing at least. But that's something, these two are the combinations. If you love the product to build that you're doing, can speak for itself and you can just be patient with it. You will build a product that can do something. And over a period of time, there's always time for you to enhance. So that's the leverage that you got to give yourself over a period of time. That's something that I think.
Yeah, I think that was a great point. I also fully agree. One point in a little more from a day-to-day work standpoint is there is some, I don't know, at least that when we started, there was that myth that everything is not available in India. Completely not true. Completely not true. Literally, there is a facility or a lab or a professor who is doing whatever you want to do in some level of it with the hardware and the facility in India. You just have to be relentless in searching. there is a testing facility for everything in space tech in India. It was such a surprise for me and him when we found out that, right? Like not in ISRO. I'm not talking about ISRO. I'm talking about outside ISRO. You can literally pretty much, I think except for very high power engines or something, there are test stands to do everything. And so I think that because deep tech is usually associated with too much capital initially, and too much capital, if you drill down, is because of facilities, not because of the product. Even for us, what you saw there that didn't fly is the costly one. The one that flew was cheaper, right? So there is that, at least I felt a lot of people gave me that fear in the beginning that you need a lot of money and that is not available in India, and where will you go? But that I think I want to completely, guarantee you that, and if you have questions, you can reach out to me or Moin. There is a facility for anything you want to test in India. You just have to find that out. The problem also is that they don't market themselves well. So some of the best kept secrets in India are where these facilities are. Like I'll tell you the combustion R&D center we worked out of, right? But like where Anirudh visited us for the first time, it is the world's largest combustion R&D center, and I'm pretty sure unless you've been there, you won't know about it here. That is just a little sad because we don't talk about it a lot, but their facilities are there. So my only thing for founders who are starting off now is if you think capital is needed, you can find alternative ways to, hedge that need at least in the early years so that you get some prototype out, and with that you can build confidence to go ahead.
And I have one question before I ask the audience for if somebody could have a mic ready. My one question to you is, because there are investors also in the audience, and obviously now that they've seen deep tech does work in India, but it's also important to understand how to support a deep tech founder through this journey, right? And multiple stages. Maybe not everybody will understand the tech as well as you all do, but how can they be of help and support to a deep tech founder building rockets, building whatever they are? But what do you think they could provide? How do you think they should treat a deep tech founder? Let's put it that way. And you've had the tough ones. So.
I was just thinking Anirudh should answer that question. I think networks, because a lot of LPs of funds here are from industrial backgrounds or have that business already for certain supply chains. So one thing we have benefited from is from our investor base, we get connected to the suppliers who will be giving us. So because that comes from indirectly their own money also with us, you get good deals with them, and always use a network. That I think is the biggest one. And there is also, because a lot of people also come and tell us that, as a financial investor, we can only do so much. But I do think because where that money is coming from can be from industrial backgrounds, and that will be a big help. Particularly in those 2-3 years I'm talking about. Once you get to a certain size, then today even the larger companies are willing to work with us. But there was that phase where even to get a meeting with some of these larger companies was hard. They'll put the junior most salesperson with us, and even that person will not be a decision maker and so on. So in those phases, I think if the investors have that network with the suppliers, that will be a big help.
I think I'll just add on to that, right? So if you're building a product, I think people should focus on building the product, because the other things about building the company, I think that could be helped. For example, legal, marketing, finance. This is the core of what the investors can actually bring. Yeah, HR,
so many conversations
HR conversations. Yeah. So accounting, all of these things, the standards, the practices, this is generally helped out for the company. And deep tech can focus particularly on the product as well as on the technology. So I think that's something, it's like all of them are joining together and building one company, right? That's a feeling that I think the deep tech should actually have it.
Wonderful. Is there any questions from the audience? You could put up your hand and I'll... Sir, here has a question.
Sir, it was a wonderful talk. From 3D printing technology, how much weight you can reduce compared to the conventional techniques of building a rocket? What is the percentage of weight reduction from 3D printing? And the next question is, when you launch the vehicle, there are a lot of vibration and noise. Did you embed sensors right at this stage, in the 3D printing stage itself, to monitor the health of the rocket? That means online monitoring of the health of the rocket. And the third thing is, from your experience of building rocket, is this experience, can you build an aircraft engine which India is lagging behind for aircrafts and for both military and commercial aircrafts, we are not able to build engines. We are always importing. So you have so much experience of building a rocket. Can you, with your knowledge and experience and this great success, can you help India build aero engines?
Yeah, I'll take one or two questions. Maybe Moin can answer one or two. First question, how much mass you save? I think for our engine, it comes down to almost 30% or 35% reduction. And we use a lot of engines. In fact, that's how we make the vehicle modeler. And this is already the first cut. I think there is still, if you really try hard, 5% more can be scrapped out because you only construct where you want. The beauty of 3D printing is you build where you want, in other places you don't even build, as opposed to taking a solid block and carving out. So that is the answer to that question. Do we measure the noise and the effect from vibration? Of course, and maybe not in the exact 3D printing stage, but in the testing stage. Every engine test also has this acoustic sensors and vibration sensors and accelerometers. So literally by the time you're on the pad, you almost exactly know what will be happening to all of the vehicle components, except for what will happen if you lift off. So I think that is a standard part of ISRO's discipline as well. Like without that, they won't clear for launch actually. That's what we learned. So that's on that part. Aero engines.
I think on the third question, I think that's generally a talk that me and Srinath also have about it. It's like as a country, like yes, we've been trying to build an engine for some time. So, but rocket engines are different. It's because this is static and this is dynamic. I think, I mean, at least there are no moving parts in a rocket engine, but in an aircraft, there are a lot of moving parts. So, at the moment, we want to focus on building the launch vehicles. I think we want to be focusing on one product. But yes, over a period of time, if we've mastered this, I think why not? Definitely.
Wow. Any other questions? There's one question over there.
Once you were building and in the very initial stages, when there was so much of uncertainty, basically, like, will you ever make money? Like, is it even possible to make money from there? So, how did you deal with the uncertainty of the money aspect of it in the initial days? That's the first question. And apart from that, the entire struggling period, what was the absolute lowest in your life? And what was exactly the lowest in your life? And from there you continued. So what made you continue and not rather like, I'll get a job or something? So 2 questions.
So the first one is easy to answer, I think, compared to the second question at least. So uncertainty, I think, at least for me, it used to be like, okay, have I done my job for the day of going and meeting enough people who can give me money, right? We can't control the outcome, we only control the effort. Very clear about that. I think even Moin shares that general philosophy a lot. So there's no point worrying about something you can't fully control, right? But have you done your part of it? Like Anirudh was saying, luck can come and it will come also. It's almost statistical, right? You can't be unlucky for too long. I very strongly believe in that. So when you finally get lucky, have you done the work to extract value from that luck is what I think we have always believed in. And yeah, there have been days where people have advised. So I'll tell you an example. There have been days where in pitches, people have advised us to go back to what Moin very polishly said it, but because you asked this question, which could also be probably one of the answers to the second question. I think at that time, Moin, you're not married, right? Yeah. And I didn't have a kid at that time. It was just like 1 year or 2 years into my wedding, after my wedding. So there was a pitch session after which I was told, if this is how I'm going to go about doing stuff, I will not have money to educate my kids and he won't get married at all. Like, literally that was the advice we got in that. And we came out and we were just thinking, why are these guys telling us all these things? So that has also happened. On a more slightly funny note, I know investors are here and so I won't pick any names, but for me personally, disappointing pitches are where the person you're talking to dozes off at the end. That is like bad.
You see?
It has happened. So, I don't know, that answered your question. Moin, if you have any more moments.
I'll tell the moments. The first question was about
This thing, the uncertainty.
Yeah, uncertainty, right. See, when there's something called as like gratification, right? I think we understood that concept a lot better than That is not, so because in today's world everything is about instant gratification, right? Everything has to happen as quickly as possible. We knew that what we are going to build is going to take some time, right? And that gratification is going to come over a period of time, which means you're compounding uncertainties together, and on one fine day that's going to be a successful one. So the vehicle is also like that, right? So every system is there, which means if you start putting the risk factor for it, there's going to be an uncertainty, right? And you just add too many systems, you're integrating too many systems, which means there is a probability of risk, there is a failure, so there is a liability, there is an insurance. People have thought about it, okay? So somehow everybody has figured out this process, but nobody has figured out this gratification process. That is something that I think over a period of time we've understood. But on the low points is about I think the people dozing off, that was something different, and and me being told on my face that I won't get married. That was.
So I just wanted to wrap it up,
Yeah.
since you mentioned you're married. So did getting married help you in this process?
See, I am generally telling that I'm doing 3 startups now. It's one is Agnikul, one is marriage, and then kids as well.
So I have a question, which is, I think there was a bit of a conversation earlier about competition, right? Now, many founders believe they have no competition. One thing I've always loved about both of you guys, you know everything about your competition. Sometimes I have to tell you, listen, you're too married to what the other guys are doing. Please concentrate on what you're doing, right? But important to obviously understand both from an investor perspective and from a founder perspective that how important is it to know what your competitors are up to and how do you do it? What is your way of doing it?
For at least the rocket industry, everyone ends up knowing what others are doing. If you just have to choose to put the effort to know it, you will know it. We always thought about competition as, if you really build a really, really good product, the competition will have to take a backseat at that point. So it was, I think Moin already mentioned that in the other part, right? Product building was just get through that difficult phase of keeping that competition not eating into your mind and do the product right. And then I think we'll be able to deal with it. That's how, at least it's because even if someone wants to build a rocket in the country now, and if they have all the money that even Elon had in SpaceX, it is still a 5-year journey. Literally, even for SpaceX, it's a 5-year journey. So that is a good part of deep tech. I'm not only talking rockets here, right? Any deep tech product is to master is going to take that 5+ years. So you're already on a route where it is not going to be easy to catch up for anyone. So if you just do the product right, you're already clearly 5-6 years ahead, and you can just continue on that moment.
Perfect. I think that's a good question. Moin, you want to take that?
Yeah, I think the price per kg, that's how the market is generally been spoken about. Today is about $70,000 per kg, right? So we would be charging around $40,000. So that's what we are targeting. So you want to give the customers an opportunity to actually pay half of what they're actually today spending. At the same time, also cut down the middle people that we were talking about, because there are too many plus in the build, right? Want to remove all of those pluses and be just an end-to-end solution giving. Yeah, that's something.
So I think the third thing to add is that today, if you want to launch a launch a satellite into space, the current wait time is about 2 years and 2 years. They are looking to cut that down to 2 weeks, right? So which means that that satellite can also be, because the engineers, everybody is expensive, right? And at the longer you take to get to space, the longer you take to get the learning for the next iteration of. And so I think that not only the $40,000, but in the overall scheme of things, they're probably 10% of the cost, because you're saving 2 years of development time as well. You had one more question, sir?
How many simulation runs you did before you realized the...
I must point out, sir is an aerospace engineer himself. So
How many simulations
1,000, sir.
before you realized the final hardware?
Just the engine alone would have taken thousands of simulations, each of them with a slightly different variation to get that 1% extra efficiency out. Similarly, the aerodynamics guys, they ended up doing hundreds of simulations to match the wind tunnel test. Then comes the trajectory guys, people who project the flight path. There it went into, I think each run of a simulation is around 3 minutes or so.
We built our own software for the trajectory parts, and then we validated with ISRO software as well, and I think a couple of other people as well.
That's a million simulations. So for the
that's
Monte
more
Carlo to
than a million.
converge, that's a million simulations. So I think that keeps happening in the site, and testing keeps happening in the site.
I'm Rajshekhar from ISRO. Actually, I was instrumental second and third testing. At actual day, I was not there in your launch day.
Okay.
On the day, even our chairman is also not there.
Okay.
Anyhow, congrats for your this thing.
Thank you.
Just because now ISRO is giving chance to all startup companies. See, all people are trying to launch this thing, but finally, what about debris? What you are going to plan? Anything? Can you explain? Space debris, because it is the most important at present. That can you explain?
So we definitely want to build in what we call that, we'll follow the deorbiting protocol. 2 to 3% of the fuel in the upper stage, we are trying to make sure that we use to slow ourselves down a little at least, so that we don't end up contributing to debris. The other way is to actually take the ISRO route of, like, ISRO has this experimental platform for the 4th stage of their PSLV, where they actually extend the life of it and get something out of it also. So either you don't stay up there after ejecting the satellite, or if you stay up there, be useful for someone. That is the path we want to be definitely taking. I think a lot of customers have actually become aware of this, and they are mandating it now. Like, if you don't deorbit, we are not flying with you. So that is also coming up as a requirement for us now. 2-3 people have told us that recently. So
I think there's a lot of push for space situational awareness, sir, and I think this comes from the United Nations Outer Office of Space Affairs. I think it is mandatory for the launch vehicle company as well as the satellites that are put into orbit, because it's like an orbital real estate. For satellites, it's after 5 years. For launch vehicles, it's as early as possible. So that is something that we are mandated to follow. So we would be following that, sir.
And I have one last question. So both of you guys, obviously, your personal lives are launched, both married, both have kids, right? But what's next for Agnikul? Where are we going to see it in 5 years?
Next immediate milestone is orbital commercial launches. I mean, the world won't call it commercial because I think you need at least 2 to 3 consecutive flights that are working to call it commercial. But we will try to make some revenue out of it. So there are enough people on the sidelines, right, not able to get launches. So that is one thing. So that is a big one. I think if like in immediate inspiration to look for in terms of scaling is obviously SpaceX, because last year they did some 96 launches or so. I think figuring that out is actually an ecosystem problem. It's an Agnikul problem, obviously, but every supplier you talk to, every vendor you talk to should also ramp up their systems to a level where the quality is met for that scale. That is, I think, slightly new in India. Maybe we'll have to see how because maybe obviously, like, say, some other companies will also do their own satellite products or whatever it is, but launching correctly at scale is a new, I don't think anyone else has done it other than SpaceX. So it's going to be a very interesting problem for us to tackle. Quality at scale is how we refer to it. So we try, and I think SpaceX got around it by vertically integrating. Everything is done in-house. Almost everything is done in-house. But I don't know if that is the only way to do it. So Moin and I keep talking about that. Of course, it's a little early, but we should plan for that now, right? Because after the first 2-3 launches, that will be the next problem to solve, and it may be too late to start this.
So I think it's been a very, it's always entertaining. There's always something new to learn. Today I learned about investors dozing off, right? So very interesting conversation. I really love, I think, we were talking about earlier in the VC panel as well, that we're sitting here in air-conditioned rooms, but if you go to their facility in Chennai, which says, beware, snakes have been seen here, you really realize what really is going on over there, because it is in almost inhospitable conditions, and you must be really motivated to really convince that 150 people that are sitting there to sit there. They can only travel back and forth by bus, because unfortunately at night you literally can't see anything, and there literally might be snakes that you're walking over. But just the passion that you two have displayed, I think obviously the results were going to come, whether not now, so maybe a year later, kind of a thing. But it really has been one of the most incredible journeys. And honestly, and this was a cousin telling me, we were talking about, hey, so what about Agnikul? So I go, no, now they're worth almost $500 million. This things happen like that. He's like, but they're just getting started. I said, that's true. You're just getting started. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you, everyone.
Just 1 second, I just want to take this moment to, there was this post that ISRO put out after the launch about how many ways in which ISRO helped. And I think one thing, and Moin also said this in his thank you speech after the launch, like to build any, and I think it extends beyond rockets as well, but specifically for Agnikul, I think Agnikul was just one part of the story. I think investors is one part of the story. ISRO is a huge part of the story, the retired ISRO community, and then all the people you saw on the video, the team. I think just want to take this moment to thank all of them as well. We always feel we are very lucky to have that group. You can't build rockets by yourself. That's one thing I have learned in the past. You need an ecosystem to support.
I think like if somebody is building a rocket, it's a family also building the rocket. I think that's something that we generally say it about. And definitely a thanks to the Almighty as well, right? Because we wouldn't have been gotten here through any of those things. But yeah, thank you.